In the next 3 videos, I want to go over how to create a platform that moves around for us. There's 3 basic ways I like to do this. If it's just something simple where I have a platform that's just going to move left and right or up and down, just bounces between 2 positions, a lot of the times I'll just use a tween. Now, if it's something more complex or potentially it could have a series of different movements it can make, maybe it can move up and down and then up and right after a button switched, or think of it as different type of animations. I'll use an animation player for that, and then we can keyframe it. And then the third way is if I have some sort of path I want it to follow through my scene. And in those cases, well, I use a path for it. So to start off really super simple, we're going to look at the tween way. So I'll come in, make a new scene. And for the node that we're going to use this time, it's an animatable body 2D. And actually, let's take a quick look at this. It's a 2D physics body, and it can't be affected by other things colliding with it, but it can collide with other things to move, or to move the other things that it collides with. So let's take a look at how we're going to set this up. If we hover over, we see we need a collision shape, but before that we need a sprite. And just to make this easy, I'm just going to go with a color rect. I'll zoom in a bit. I'm going to take my color rect and I'll just make it a bit bigger, maybe a little bit thinner as well. And actually we won't save just yet. I'm going to go back to the root. We need a collision shape. We'll add that, and then we need a shape for the collision shape. So we'll come over, and I'm just going to use a rectangle. And then I want to go ahead and make sure this is positioned right. So I'm going to take my sprite. I'll move it up a bit. I want it uncentered. I'm going to keep the origin to the left side. You can move it if you want, but I'm just going to keep it there. I'll drag this out till we get to the edge, drag it down, encompass that. If you zoomed in enough and you have snapping enabled, you should be able to snap right to the edges. Great. Now this is all we need for the nodes. So I'm going to go up to the root node, and I want platform as the first word because we're going to be making 3 of these, and I want them listed together alphabetically. So we'll say platform, and since this one's going to be done with tweening, I'll call it tweening. So platform tweening. We'll give it a quick save. Make sure to save it inside of your scenes. And then we're going to add a script, which I'll keep the same. I'm going to put this in my scripts folder. And we'll go ahead and create. Now I like to give all my classes now a name, and I'm just going to call it platform tweening. Give it a quick save, come down, and I want to export the distance. So how much it's going to move. So we'll export that var. I'm just going to call it distance, maybe tween distance. This is going to be of type, let's do a type int. You can't really move on half an integer. Actually, we'll keep it as a float just in case we want to somehow multiply it by something. And I'm going to start off with, let's move maybe 150. And since it's a float, I'm going to put a 0. Then I'll come into my ready function, and I'm going to create my tween and just start it here. So to create our new tween, var tween of type tween is equal to, then we can just use create tween. And then let's start tweening the property. So the property I want is tween.tween property. What do we want to tween? Well, this is attached to the root node, and this is what I'm actually going to move. So I'll just say stealth. Now the property I want to tween on, I'm just going to do it on position X, but for now I'm just going to say position. If we really want to just say only on X, we could do it that way. I like to take the position just the way it is. And then what do we want to move to? I'm going to start off moving just left to right. We can go up and down, we can go diagonally. If you can do one way, you should be able to do them all. So I'm going to start off by moving to the left, and I'm going to multiply this by the tween distance. And then I need a time. How long do I want to take to do this? I'm going to export this as well. So var tween distance or tween time, which I will do a float. Quite often you want to have less than a full second, but in this case, I'm just going to do a second. So now down here, we can just say tween time. And then we want it to move from wherever it is that we place it. And then we want it to move this distance to the left. So we have to use as relative. If we don't, it's going to move to whatever this position is in the global space. So we'll jump back into main. I'm going to go to the 2D view. I'm going to instance this. So we called it platform something, platform tweening. Yeah, there we go. I've got it right here. And because of the way we have this scene set up, or just the game itself set up as far as the physics layers go, if we start it off, it should move. It's only going to move to the left, but if we jump on it, we're going to go right through it. Let's get that part fixed first. We can see that it moved. It did move to the left. Well, let's jump back in. And if you remember, our player only interacts with the ground. And just to demonstrate, where's our player? Right here. If we open this up, not the move floor, right here. So our player's on layer 1, and he can only interact with the ground. For some reason, I'm not getting my pop-ups. I think I've hit a key that's disabled it. If you know what key that is, go ahead, let me know down below in the comments. I hit this one a lot. But we can see that it only interacts with whatever we have on layer 2, which is our ground, and on layer 3, which is our enemy. So it needs to be one of those, or we can make another layer and stick all our platforms on that. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to make our platform. He doesn't need to interact with anything. I'm just going to put him on 2. So now when I run it, and we jump on it, we shouldn't go through. There we go. We can run on it. So the next thing I want to do is make my platform go back and forth. Now we've worked with tweens before. The simple one is we could copy this, paste it in, and then instead of moving to the left, we can move to the right, the exact same distance. And since it's still as relative, when this tween part here is done, it'll start the next one. So we'll move the exact same distance the other way. There we go, bounces back, but it stops because we want it to loop. And everyone remember how to make it loop? We just tell it to set the loop count. If we leave it empty, it loops forever. If I recall correctly, making it negative loops forever as well. So we'll hit start. And now it should just bounce back and forth. So there's only a couple things left I like to do here. Again, if I need a very simple platform to move back and forth, I'll almost always use a tween, just because it's so easy and fast to set up. I want to set my transitions just so it's not so linear, bouncing back and forth. I'm going to come up here, export another variable, and I'll call this the tween transition, which is of type tween transition type. And then I can come down here, fill this in. We're going to use that tween transition. I'll save this off, come up to my main node here. We can see that by default, it does linear. Let's do something a little bit more rampy. So it slows down near the edges. Let's try sine first. So I'll come in, we'll hit run, and we'll notice now as it should slow down as it gets to the ends. It's a little bit bouncer. We'll switch it to something else. Exponential will probably be too, I think of it as stabby. But you can play around with these, find out exactly which one you like. There we go. Of course, you can have a longer distance as well. You just change how long you want the distance to be. Go ahead, play around with these. Maybe a quint, or let's do a quart. This might be a little bit better. I think that's closer to what I want. Maybe a longer distance. But that's it. This is how I like to animate my platforms. If I just need something super simple, left to right, and just bounces back and forth. Only a few lines of code. And I can go ahead and just stick this script on a ton of different platforms, and they're all set up. No animations, no paths, perfect. But the next one, we're gonna look at how to do it through an animation and using keyframes. But as always, I'll see you there. Bye-bye.